Chapter 1149. Kangwoo County had been regarded as Chu Xiu's exclusive property. No one could touch it, including Cold River City. Chi Wuhan was stunned when he saw Chu Xiu attacking him with all his might without any hesitation. What is this guy thinking? Does he really not care about the relationship between the Imperial Sky Pavilion and Cold River City? Or is he just a reckless man who doesn't know how to be flexible, and only knows how to fight and kill? However, Chu Xiu was already slashing at him. The powerful sharpness of the blade forced Chi Wuhan to take it seriously. He had no time to think about these things. He threw a punch, and everything around him condensed into ice. It was as if every drop of water in the air had condensed into icicles, emitting boundless sharpness and blocking Chu Xiu's attack. However, the icicles were all torn apart. The chilly air in the air turned into a giant ice dragon, and smashed down on Chu Xiu's attack. The dragon's tail swept out. Although it was torn apart by Chu Xiu's attack, it still managed to freeze the attack in the air. At this moment, Chi Wuhan made a seal with one hand. At this moment, Chu Xiu felt the blood in his body being frozen. This Chi Wuhan has probably comprehended a part of the power that belongs to the rules. In the next moment, two types of flames burned around Chu Xiu. The true fire of inner energy burst out, suppressing the chilly air that sealed his blood and qi in his body. The other was the world annihilation flame, which spread along the frost dragon towards Chi Wuhan. With a loud bang, the giant ice dragon exploded. Every piece of the ice dragon carried extremely powerful chilly power, forcing the Mahavirokana Dharma form behind Chu Xiu to appear. He made the colorless sealing mudra, and collected all the ice pieces into it. Chi Wuhan took a step back with surprise in his eyes. No wonder you can kill Yi Tianqing. I really don't know how you managed to cultivate such powerful power at such a young age. Also, even I can't see through your inheritance. Which lineage of the primeval lord are you? However, to be able to control such power, Yi Tianqing's death was justified. Since he isn't wronged, then you don't have to avenge him. The triple annihilation arrow appeared in Chu Xiu's hand, burning with a world-destroying fire, and the arrow shot towards Chi Wuhan with an extraordinary power of nirvanic extermination. Although your power is demonic, this kind of thing can't hurt me. Chi Wuhan pointed with his finger. There seemed to be no change in the air, but the void trembled. An ice flower condensed on the triple city extinguishing arrow. In the blink of an eye, the annihilation triple city link arrow was frozen in mid-air, its power frozen. This was one of the secret skills of Cold River City. Divine Ice Finger, which was said to be able to freeze any kind of power. But in the next moment, Chi Wuhan felt that something was wrong. The Divine Ice Finger was not an unsolvable martial technique. The energy that was sealed in ice would definitely have a backlash. However, he did not sense any backlash at all. With Chu Xiu's strength, this should not have happened. In the next moment, a sense of crisis came. Layers of icicles appeared around Chi Wuhan's body, enveloping his whole body. A loud bang rang out, and a triple destruction city arrow had already shot out from behind him. It collided with the layer of ice and immediately ignited a monstrous world-destroying fire. The icicles shattered, but even the world-destroying fire was peeled off. Chi Wuhan said with a trace of horror in his eyes, "Illusion. You are also good at illusion." Just now, Chu Xiu had used the true illusion skill that he had learned from Moriha. However, it was a pity that he was not in existence like Moriha, who specialized in illusions. Even if he had sufficient mental energy, he could not use it naturally to the extent of being able to condense illusions into reality. Last time, Chu Xiu was able to discover the triple city extinguishing arrow because he had the heaven sun gazing at air. But now Chi Wuhan had not cultivated the secret technique of mental strength, but he was still discovered. It seemed that Chu Xiu still needed to practice this move well. However, Chu Xiu did not know that Chi Wuhan's horror at this time was no less than his. Previously, all the martial techniques that Chu Xiu had used were the extremely fierce and imposing type. In the end, he was actually able to use such a dangerous and strange illusion technique. It was simply impossible to guard against. Yi Tianqing was simply a good-for-nothing. His death was worthless. He didn't even get to learn the basic martial arts of Chu Xiu before he died. Chi Wuhan's eyes showed a trace of blue light, which was very strange. This kind of strength of Chu Xiu was enough for him to use his full strength. Just to probe, maybe he would even follow Yi Tianqing's footsteps if he was careless. An extremely cold breath emanated from Qi Wuhan's body. In an instant, the originally hot southern wilderness suddenly snowed, like the frozen scenery of the north. Chu Xiu was slightly taken aback. Territory? It doesn't seem to be. This part of the world was still under the original rules, but Qi Wuhan forcibly used his own power to speed up the rules, causing the southern wilderness to begin to snow in the summer. But what was the use of this? To show that his strength was strong. Before Chu Xiu could react, in the endless snowflakes, a figure of hundreds of feet had already emerged. Countless snowflakes shrouded his body, and when he punched, the coldness seemed to freeze his spirit essence. At this moment, Chu Xiu understood that no wonder Qi Wuhan was called Ice God Lord. What he triggered was actually the power of the ancient demon god. The ancient demon god was born and nurtured by nature. They themselves were a kind of the rules of heaven and earth. Even though they had dissipated now, there was still a will floating between heaven and earth. What Qi Wuhan used was this power. Looking at the punch that was enough to freeze his spirit essence, Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hand, and his whole body was shrouded in pure demonic energy. The heaven cries blood rain fell, and the void was directly torn apart. The huge and ferocious demon god reached out and grabbed at the ice demon god. In fact, strictly speaking, Chu Xiu's great compassion mantra of heaven and earth was very similar to the power that Qi Wuhan was using now. Both of them were basically the same existence. The power brought by the great compassion mantra was the convergence of all kinds of evil and negative forces between heaven and earth. The demon god summoned after the heaven cries blood rain was just a manifestation of the convergence of power. The great compassion mantra was born in the primitive demon cave. This kind of power was attached to a warrior's body, so the great compassion mantra was born. If this power was born in the ancient times and no one had ever touched it, it might eventually become this kind of natural demon god body. Therefore, these two kinds of power were actually a manifestation of the will of heaven and earth. When the two collided, they were in a stalemate. Chu Xiu's combat strength had increased greatly, and Qi Wuhan was not an ordinary person. At least, he was much stronger than Yi Tianqing. Therefore, at this time, no one could do anything to the other. But when Qi Wuhan looked at the other people, his face darkened. Because the people of Cold River City were being beaten up. Qi Wuhan had already investigated the strength of Kangwu County before. He finally came to the conclusion that except for Chu Xiu, the others were just a motley crew. Only Qin Zhong, who was the former gatekeeper of Royal Sky Pavilion, could fight a little bit. The others were simply too weak to withstand a single blow. And now there were a few more people around Chu Xiu, and their strength turned out to be the best among the warriors of the same level. It could even be said that they were the top existences. The ferocious-looking strong man's cultivation method was extremely strange. He could control the power of qi and blood. Not long after the fight, a warrior of Cold River City was sucked dry of his blood. As for the white-robed young man with the ancient halberd in his hand, his strength was frighteningly strong. He wasn't any weaker compared to those geniuses from the major sections. As he brandished the ancient halberd in his hand, the might he exuded was simply unparalleled. There were also the two seemingly gentle and delicate women. One of them had the strength of the true fire spiritual cultivation realm. Her cultivation method was extremely evil, and could confuse one's mind and provoke inner demons. Although the other woman was slightly weaker, her attacks were incomparably ruthless. She was like an assassin that walked in the dark. It was fine if she didn't make a move, but once she did, even a martial artist at the true fire spirit refinement realm might be hit if he was caught off guard. And the last warrior, who looked the most ordinary, was also at a higher level among the warriors of the same level. At least, it would not be a problem for him to fight against the warriors of Cold River City. Qi Wuhan wanted to fight back, but the more he fought, the more frustrated he became. With a cold snort, Qi Wuhan broke free from the entanglement with Chu Xiu and shouted, "Come back!" For some reason, Cold River City would not start a full-scale war with the Imperial Sky Pavilion for the time being. So it was meaningless to continue the fight. Qi Wuhan was not Yi Tianqing, who would not care about anything as the fight went on. In the end he would die in the fight. After taking a deep look at Chu Xiu, Qi Wuhan did not say anything in the end. He directly closed the city gate and retreated into the city. The surrounding warriors of Cold River City did not say anything because, strictly speaking, they were the ones who held Qi Wuhan back today. Qi Wuhan hadn't even used his trump card yet, but in the end, they couldn't hold on anymore. However, at this time, Qi Wuhan did not care about them. Instead, he immediately wrote a letter and sent it back to the headquarters of Cold River City. Chu Xiu would definitely be a great enemy of Cold River City in the future, because Chu Xiu reminded him of a person. Without him, there would be no Cold River City today. Meng Xinghe, the Xinghe unfettered cultivator. Meng Xinghe in the past was like Chu Xiu now. He entered Cold River City as a foreign minister, and was surrounded by groups of experts and talents. In the end, he helped Cold River City to rise. How similar was the current Chu Xiu to Meng Xinghe in the past? They were both young, but their strength was already extremely terrifying. They were all foreign ministers of big sects, and were good friends with the successors of their sections. Now he was surrounded by so many experts. The more Qi Wuhan thought about it, the more similar this scene was to Cold River City in the past. Cold River City rose because of this, but Qi Wuhan was also worried that it would decline because of this. This kind of success could be replicated in Cold River City once. There was no need for other sects to replicate it a second time. In his opinion, the threat of Chu Xiu was even greater than that of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, which was already in the twilight. Chapter 1150. Gold would shine wherever it was, and Chu Xiu would be viewed as an enemy no matter where he went. At this moment, Chu Xiu had no idea that someone like him, who was not loyal to the Imperial Sky Pavilion at all, and was even trying to steal from the Imperial Sky Pavilion, would be considered a greater threat than the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Of course, the Daluotian issue was not within Chu Xiu's consideration at the moment. Returning to the lower realm to destroy the Subodhi Monastery and take control of the passage between the two realms was the most urgent matter for Chu Xiu. After staying in the Cangnan prefecture for a while, Kecha came to report that He Jie had returned. After receiving the news, Chu Xiu immediately called Lu Jianghe and the others, who had been wandering around, to come back and prepare to return to the lower realm. In such a short time, Lu Jianghe and the others were naturally not there to cultivate. Even the calm Chu Wuji was wandering around. Mei Qinglian and Mu Zi even bought a lot of rouge and face powder. What would the others think of them bringing back such specialties from another realm? In the Nan'an prefecture, He Jie and Green Jade were already waiting for Chu Xiu. Have you finished dividing the territory with the barbarian tribes in the depths of the Dilua Mountains? What's the result? He Jie bowed to Chu Xiu and said, thanks to the power brought by the divine messenger, our He Luo tribe is now on par with the large tribes in the depths of the Dilua Mountains. Our tribe does things in a simple and direct manner. The more strength you show, the higher your status. Therefore, the entire territory near Kangwu County is now under the control of our He Luo tribe. Chu Xiu nodded in satisfaction. This way he did not have to worry about anything in the barbarian tribe. As long as the He Luo tribe was not destroyed, they could help him protect this place. Then Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, I have something to ask Chief He Jie and Priest Green Jade's help. It's not a divine decree, but a personal matter. He Jie hastily said, it doesn't matter if it's God's will or not. As long as it's an order from Lord God's messenger, our Black Net tribe will definitely risk our lives to fulfill it. Chu Xiu nodded with satisfaction and said, it's like this. God's power is extremely strong. He created many worlds in a row, and the world you live in is one of them. I also have a foundation in another world, but I need to eliminate some disobedient forces. I don't have enough manpower at the moment, so I need you and the high priest to take action. Lu Jianghe and the others watched as Chu Xiu pretended to be a quack, and all of them had strange expressions on their faces. Even Lu Fengxian, who was the kindest of them all, couldn't help but want to laugh. However, he held it in. Lu Jianghe and the others began to sympathize with the barbarians after seeing how Chu Xiu had tricked them. Of course, they did not know how much effort Chu Xiu had put into the details in order to create the image of himself as the oracle. After all, Although these barbarians were a bit simple-minded, they were not idiots. Hejia and Green Jade looked at each other and nodded. They agreed without any hesitation. They had already discussed this before. They could only obey this Lord God's messenger. There was no other choice. Unless he did something that would harm their tribe, they had to maintain this attitude. Only then would they be able to obtain a steady stream of God's power. Now they were only being asked to be hired as fighters. This was not a big deal for them. Lu Jiang, he said from behind. Is it enough to bring the two of them? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, don't underestimate them. Hejia's power is not inferior to that of a heaven and earth profound realm expert who specializes in cultivating the body. Although he might not have an advantage against a warrior of the same realm, he can still easily defeat you. Green Jade is the high priest of the Black Net tribe. He has mastered many strange barbarian secret techniques. He can also threaten the heaven and earth profound realm experts. After everything was arranged, Chu Xiu directly brought his people to the passage and returned to the mortal world. Hejia and Green Jade had come to the mortal world for the first time. Even if they were not very curious, they were still very shocked. However, after a while, they calmed down. At least, they were calmer than when Lu Jianghe and the others had first arrived at the Daluotian tribe. Lu Jianghe and the others thought a lot, so they were very curious. Hejia and Green Jade's thinking was very simple. Since Chu Xiu was the god's messenger, and God was an omnipotent existence, what did it matter if he created a few worlds? In any case, everything that they could not understand could be blamed on God. After returning to the Kunlun mountain, Chu Xiu arranged for Hejia, Green Jade, and the others to rest. He asked Wei Shuya, Elder Wei, has anything happened in the martial world recently? Wei Shuya shook his head and said, no, Sabodhi Zen Monastery is gathering all the disciples. It seems that they don't intend to leave, but fight with them desperately. The entire martial world also knows about this matter. Now it is the calm before the storm. However, you will probably see a lot of acquaintances later. All the major sects are preparing to come to the Kunlun mountain in 2s and 3s. Some should already be on the way. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, oh, I have underestimated them. I have returned twice, and there are still people preparing to make a move? Could it be that they have some trump cards? Wei Shuya had a strange look on his face. They shouldn't be here to make a move. Then what are they here for? They should be here to persuade you to repent. Wei Shuya was right. The major sects really didn't come to find trouble with him, but to persuade him. The first to come was the Shangshuaying clan, and the Shangshuaying clan also brought the Mo family along. After a few years, Mo Tianlin had stepped into the real pellet state and became the master of the Shangyang Mo family. He still had 2 small mustaches, which made him look much more mature. Seeing Chu Xiu, Mo Tianlin smiled and said, Brother Chu, welcome back. Mo Tianlin walked forward with a smile. When he approached Chu Xiu, he whispered, it was the Shangshuaying clan who forced me to come. For the Mo family, I had to come with you. But Brother Chu, no matter what you do later, you don't have to consider me. Chu Xiu smiled and patted Mo Tianlin's shoulder with an unfathomable smile on his face. The Shangshuaying clan thought a lot. They even knew to use their relationship with Mo Tianlin. After all, everyone in the martial world knew that Mo Tianlin and Chu Xiu were good friends in the early days. Chu Xiu looked at Ying clan's old ancestor and said, what is Mr. Ying doing here in the Kunlun mountain? It can't be to welcome my return, right? Ying clan's old ancestor asked, why not? If it is possible, then it is a joke. Chu Xiu said blankly. Ying clan's old ancestor laughed and said, no, this is not a joke. Chu Xiu, now you have the strength to do so. After 2 great tribulations, everyone thought you would die. To be precise, they watched you die, but you came back. I dare say that there are almost no forces in the martial world who are willing to be enemies with you now. And the Kunlun devil cult can also gain a foothold in the martial world. If that's the case, why do you have to be so ruthless? You have already destroyed the great Guangming temple. As for the Sabodhi Zen temple, how about you let them go once? I am willing to lead the righteous martial world and form an alliance with the demonic path. From now on, everyone will live in peace, and there will be no confrontation between the righteous and the demonic path. What do you think? Chu Xiu stared at Ying Clan's old ancestor, until the smile on his face completely disappeared. Then he said indifferently, Mr. Ying's words are a bit too much. Your Shangshui Ying clan has been neutral most of the time, and has not suppressed the demonic path too much. This is true. But when my demonic path was suppressed in the past, why didn't you mention anything about an alliance and eliminating the confrontation between the righteous and demonic path? I, Chu Xiu, always follow the rules. If people respect me, I will respect them tenfold. If anyone dares to touch me, I will annihilate their entire clan. The corner of Ying Clan's old ancestor's mouth twitched. If I respect you, you will only return tenfold. If anyone dares to touch you, they will be annihilated. This doesn't seem fair. Chu Xiu said coldly, the Sabodhi Zen temple attacked me once in the 6 illusory realms. Then, they took the lead to seal my holy church's rootless sacred flame. There are personal and public grudges. If I don't annihilate the Sabodhi Zen temple, how can I, Chu Xiu, have the face to stand in the martial world? Ying Clan's old ancestor signaled Mo Tianlin with a look, indicating for him to persuade him. He was the one who had forced Mo Tianlin to come. Of course, he had only hinted at him and not directly threatened him. After all, Mo Tianlin was Chu Xiu's good friend. If he put a knife to his neck and threatened him, he would offend Chu Xiu even more. But even so, Shangshui Ying clan had secretly threatened Mo Tianlin with a few words, and Mo Tianlin had still followed them. Although they both belonged to the 9 great clans, the difference between the Mo clan and the Shangshui Ying clan was like the difference between heaven and earth. Mo Tianlin saw the look in Ying clan's old ancestor's eyes and shook his head helplessly. It was precisely because he was Chu Xiu's good friend that he knew that Chu Xiu was never a person who could take advice. Once he made a decision, no one could change it unless he died. But Mo Tianlin couldn't disrespect Ying clan's old ancestor here. He had no choice but to stand up and say, Brother Chu, this matter is indeed the Sabodhi Zen temple's fault. But Brother Chu, you are broad-minded and magnanimous. A prime minister's stomach can carry a boat, and a general's forehead can run a horse. Your breadth of mind is unparalleled, and you are admired by millions of people in the martial world. Why don't we turn this matter into a small one and let it pass? Listening to Mo Tianlin's nonsense, Chu Xiu couldn't help but stroke his chin. Was he talking about him? Ying clan's old ancestor's face darkened. Obviously, even an idiot could tell that Mo Tianlin was talking nonsense. In the entire martial world, there weren't many people who were more narrow-minded than Chu Xiu. Are you sure these words are used to describe Chu Xiu? Many people on Chu Xiu's side were trying to hold back their laughter, especially Luo Feiheng. She had known Mo Tianlin for a very long time. Although he was now the head of the clan and acted like a dog, he was still a playboy who had drawn his sword in a brothel in a fit of rage. He was not a serious person at all. The Ying family's patriarch was thinking too much if he wanted to use him. Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. Just at this moment, a burst of laughter suddenly rang out. It was as if the old ancestor was about to faint from laughing so hard that his face darkened even more. Chapter 1151. Thanks to Mo Tianlin's nonsense, the atmosphere was no longer as solemn as before. As that devilish laughter rang out, everyone immediately turned to look. The person laughing maniacally was none other than Feng Qishao, as well as the experts from the 3 major sword sects, Sword King City, Forgetful Sword Hut, and Windcloud Sword Tomb. Feng Qishao looked at Mo Tianlin, laughing maniacally as he said intermittently, Brother Mo, you're also a genius. Are you sure what you said about Brother Chu was not sarcastic? Why do I feel like you're defaming him? Heavenly King Shun's face darkened. He pulled Feng Qishao over, sealed his mouth with sword qi, and threw him behind him. This time, all the experts from the 3 major sword sects had come. Logically speaking, Feng Qishao was not qualified to come. However, Heavenly King Shun's thoughts were the same as the Ying family's patriarch. He thought that bringing someone who was familiar with Chu Xiu would make things easier. Previously, Heavenly King Shun had thought that Feng Qishao's friendship with a demon like Chu Xiu was not a good thing for Sword King City. But now, it seemed that this had become an opportunity for Sword King City. He could use Fang Qixiao's friendship with Chu Xiu to bring him to Kunlun and persuade Chu Xiu to stop. In the end, he had miscalculated. He had miscalculated because of Fang Qixiao's mouth. His laughter completely wiped out the atmosphere. Even Heavenly King Shen didn't know what to say. Heavenly King Shen coughed and said, "Official Chu, you should know why we are here. The 5 major sword sects rarely interfere with the affairs of the pugilistic world, but this matter." Before Heavenly King Shen could finish, Chu Xiu interrupted. "I know what you want to say, sect leader Shen. If you want to persuade me to stop, I advise you to keep your mouth shut. Since you've rarely meddled in other people's business, it's best that you don't meddle in it now. The 5 great sword sects only exist in name, and have become the 3 great sword sects. You don't want to lose another one, do you?" Hearing Chu Xiu's threatening words, the faces of the cultivators from the other 3 great sword sects turned somewhat ugly to behold. However, none of them said that Chu Xiu was being arrogant. None of them dared to fall out with Chu Xiu. The current Chu Xiu's strength was indeed somewhat beyond imagination. He could destroy a sect at the level of the Great Light Temple just like that. Although it was because of a surprise attack, there were only 3 people on Chu Xiu's side. In the entire pugilistic world, it seemed like no one could stop him other than the moon-worshipping cult and the most mysterious Elysium. At that moment, Fang Qixiao had already broken free from the shackles of Heavenly King Shen's sword qi. Only then did Chu Xiu realize that Fang Qixiao had actually stepped into the true fire spiritual refinement state. Even with Heavenly King Shen's strength, he could no longer suppress him for long. Fang Qixiao shrugged and said, "Sect leader, I've told you long ago that it's useless. No one can persuade Brother Chu. Moreover, as outsiders, you're still trying to persuade him like this. To be honest, Brother Chu's temper is already considered good. At least he didn't fight with you. You're not Brother Chu. You've never been killed, and no one has ever threatened the lifeline of your sect. At this time, you're still trying to persuade Brother Chu to be magnanimous. To be honest, it's a little inappropriate. It's commonly said that it's easier said than done. The monks of the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery all talk about karma. The karma they sowed in the past should now be repaid. It's very normal. Look, Sabodhi Monastery hasn't even asked for help from the outside. Why are we in such a hurry?" Fang Qixiao wasn't just speaking up for Chu Xiu. That was indeed what he was thinking. Although he was very inattentive most of the time, he still understood a small portion of the time. Everyone present was indifferent. They weren't really stupid. What Fang Qixiao could understand, they actually understood as well. It was just that they were pretending to be ignorant. They didn't really sympathize with Sabodhi Monastery. Instead, they were afraid of Chu Xiu and the powerful threat of the revival of the fiendish Tao. Therefore, if they could preserve a trace of the power of the righteous Tao, they would do so. However, they didn't dare to really make a move against Chu Xiu. This was the only way they could think of. But from the looks of it now, Chu Xiu was determined to destroy Sabodhi Monastery. Their persuasion was useless. Chu Xiu glanced at the crowd and said, "I have to take back the karma of the Sabodhi Monastery. However, I've already said that this matter only involves my personal grudge with the Buddhist sect. It has nothing to do with any of you. As long as no one interferes, I guarantee that I won't do anything to any of you." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, everyone present cupped their hands and turned to leave. It wasn't that they trusted Chu Xiu. It was that they had no other choice but to trust Chu Xiu. After leaving the mountain, Heavenly King Shen said to Fang Qixiao, who was still looking around, "Make some preparations after returning to Sword King City." Fang Qixiao was surprised. "What preparations?" "Prepare to take over the position of Sword King City's sect leader." Fang Qixiao's expression became even more surprised. "Sect leader, what's wrong with you? You're still in the prime of your life and you're already impotent. I heard that Brother Chu inherited many treasures left behind by Dugu Weiwei. There must be supreme-grade divine pills among them. I'll be thick-skinned and ask for one for you. You better not be impotent." Heavenly King Shen couldn't help but smack the back of Fang Qixiao's head. His face darkened. "Who's impotent? Then why are you handing the position to me when you're doing so well as the sect leader? I don't even have confidence in myself now, let alone you." Heavenly King Shen looked exasperated. A storm is brewing. I don't understand the pugilistic world anymore. Although Sword King City is far away in the western region, if something happens, we won't be able to escape unscathed. You're friends with Chu Xiu. If you become the sect leader, even if Chu Xiu grows to Dugu Weiwei's level in the future, with you around, Sword King City will be safe. Although Chu Xiu was a person who was ruthless, heartless, and liked to go to extremes, it was undeniable that he was a sentimental person. Lu Fengxian was his good friend. In the past, when he wasn't as strong as he was now, he dared to wreak havoc in the Yunnu Palace for Lu Fengxian's sake. Mo Tianlin was also his good friend in the past. Even though the gap between them was like heaven and earth now, he was willing to give Mo Tianlin face and not fall out with the Ying family's patriarch on the spot. So when you become the sect leader of Sword King City in the future, Chu Xiu won't make things difficult for Sword King City for your sake. Feng Qishao touched his face smugly and said, like I said, even if I don't have a sword in my hand, I won't starve to death with my face. Not to mention with Brother Chu, even in the brothels of Eastern Qi, my face is also very big. Back then when I went to the brothels, I didn't even need to rely on my face. Before he could finish, Heavenly King Shen glared at him fiercely. Shut up. After you become the sect leader of Sword King City, if you still speak without thinking and mention brothels again, I will break your legs. Anyway, the only thing I need is your face. Feng Qishao immediately shut up, but then he cautiously said, Sect leader, but what if the orthodox sects gain the upper hand in the end? Do you think they will accuse Sword King City of colluding with the evil sects? Those guys are very good at making false accusations. Even I can't win against them with my mouth. Heavenly King Shen said lightly, so be it. It's not like Sword King City doesn't have any connections in the orthodox sections. You are the one who is on good terms with Chu Xiu, not the few of us. Seventh young Master Feng clicked his tongue and sighed. The sect master was indeed the sect master. His ability to lie without blinking was something that seventh young Master Feng would never be able to learn. It seemed like if he wanted to be the sect master of a large sect, he would have to learn how to be shameless. A few days later, on Kunlun Mountain, all the forces under Chu Xiu's command had gathered. He only left a few low-level disciples on Kunlun Mountain. The others were prepared to join him and destroy Sabodi Zen Monastery. Given Chu Xiu's current power, no one would dare to cause trouble on Kunlun Mountain. Moreover, there was nothing precious on Kunlun Mountain, so there was no need to worry about it being destroyed. The only precious thing was the rootless sacred flame, but it could only be sealed, not destroyed. Looking at the warriors under his command, Chu Xiu didn't make a long speech this time. He just waved his hand and said lightly, "Let's go." But these two words also attracted the loud cheers of the Kunlun Devil Cult warriors. When Chu Xiu wasn't around, they didn't know how long they had been sulking. Now that Chu Xiu was back, they first destroyed the Great Light Temple, then destroyed Sabodi Zen Monastery. Their Kunlun Devil Cult finally stood at the peak of the pugilistic world. In the southern barbarian land, the barbarians around Sabodi Zen Monastery had all left. Not a single one of them remained. Although Sabodi Zen Monastery was prepared to let these barbarians leave to prevent them from being accidentally injured when the war was about to start, they had all left before Sabodi Zen Monastery could say anything. This made the warriors of Sabodi Zen Monastery very angry. After all, in the past, their Sabodi Zen Monastery had provided them with a lot of protection. The warriors of the Central Plains saw them as barbarians, and only Sabodi Zen Monastery saw them as their people. In the end, at this critical moment, they had done such a thing. It was a little disappointing. Luo Mo didn't say anything. In his opinion, this was very normal. It was human nature to seek benefits and avoid harm. Whether it was the people of the Central Plains or the barbarians, it was the same. Many people were destined to die in this war, and they were destined to be tainted with a lot of karma. Since this was the case, it was better to have fewer deaths. Monk Bukong walked behind Luo Mo and said, "Are you worried?" Luo Mo nodded, then shook his head and said, "Of course I'm worried. However, I know that worrying is useless. My Sabodi Zen Monastery can't avoid this battle to settle our karma." Monk Bukong sighed and shook his head. "Your talent is the highest among all the warriors I've seen in the monastery. Even in my Sabodhi Zen monastery 500 years ago, no one could compare to you. It's a pity that you were born at the wrong time. Luomo nodded and said, I feel the same way. If I was born 500 years ago and could see the charm of Demon Lord Dugu Weiwei, Immortal Ning Xuanji, Sword Saint Gu Qingqing, and the others, how wonderful would that be? Monk Bukong was stunned. He didn't mean that. Just as he was about to say something, the disciples of the monastery shouted from outside. The Kunlun devil cult is attacking. Chapter 1152. In front of the gates of Sabodhi Monastery, the banner of the demonic path fluttered in the wind. A murderous aura shot into the sky. The entire Sabodhi Monastery was shrouded in a terrifying aura. At this time, further away, Chu Xiu was certain that the other martial art practitioner factions in the underworld were also secretly observing. The last time Chu Xiu had destroyed the Great Light Temple, it had been too fast. In a day, the Great Light Temple had been razed to the ground. By the time they had rushed over, they could not see anything. Although Su Yin and the others were still alive, Su Yin and the others rarely revealed the details of that battle. They also did not know how strong Chu Xiu was. Therefore, although they could not stop this battle, they also wanted to see how strong Chu Xiu was. Compared to the high and mighty Great Light Temple, although the area of Sabodhi Monastery was not small, it did not have as many tall buildings. The temples were scattered in picturesque disorder, like a lotus flower. However, after this battle, how many people from Sabodhi Monastery would be left? Standing at the gates of Sabodhi Monastery, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Kunlun Chu Xiu has come to collect a debt. As Chu Xiu's voice fell, it did not dissipate. Instead, it reverberated between heaven and earth, like a demonic voice that kept reverberating. The gates of Sabodhi Monastery opened, and Monk Bukong, Rama, and the others filed out. All the martial art practitioners in Sabodhi Monastery did not have any expressions of fear. Instead, they looked very solemn. Rama said lightly, My Sabodhi Monastery does not owe anyone a debt. But you all owe me karma. Chu Xiu stared at Rama and said in a deep voice, I am very puzzled as to why you did not leave. The Great Light Temple did not have a chance to leave, but you clearly had a long time. You could have gone overseas, in the land of the far west, anywhere. In the end, you chose to wait for death here. This is really beyond my expectations. Rama shook his head and said, Since it is karma, you will have to pay it back sooner or later. The karma between you and me was not because of the illusory 6 realms, but because of our standpoints. Since you chose to restore the Kunlun devil cult, there is no room for reconciliation between you and the Buddhist sect. The Sabodhi Monastery will not hide forever. After today's battle, whether the devil rises and the Tao vanishes, or if the karma is settled, there must be a result. The warriors who were hiding in the surroundings to watch the fight were all silent. They knew that Luo Mo's last sentence was actually directed at them. If the Sabodhi Monastery lost today's battle, then the Jianghu would be filled with demons, and the Tao would disappear. The situation where the Kunlun devil cult dominated the Jianghu would repeat itself. Of course, they were aware of this. However, in the face of Chu Xiu who seemed to be unkillable, who would dare to stick their heads out? Going to Kunlun to persuade Chu Xiu was the best they could do. Of course, Luo Mo did not expect them to help. Since the entire Sabodhi Monastery did not choose to leave today's battle, they were already prepared to fight to the death. Luo Mo put his palms together and chanted, Amit Ba. In the next moment, all the disciples of the Sabodhi Monastery chanted. In an instant, their heads were filled with Buddhist light that shot into the sky, piercing through the sky that was covered by endless dark clouds and devil chi. Little halos appeared around Bukong Monk. Everywhere he passed, the surrounding plants bloomed and a rich life force bloomed. However, the price of this life force was the consumption of his own life force. In the next moment, a tall pagoda rose from the ground in the Sabodhi Monastery. It looked simple and solemn. It was actually made of bronze. The body of the pagoda was engraved with mysterious Sanskrit Buddhist seals, and carved with countless Buddhist allusions. This was the treasure of the Sabodhi Monastery, the Buddha Pagoda. In the next moment, a huge strange flower slowly bloomed on the Buddha Pagoda. The huge strange flower was dozens of feet tall. Just the petals and leaves were as tall as a person. In the center was a beautiful flower that was as white as snow. It exuded a holy aura. The flower was only half open, but when Bukong monk put his own life force into it, the flower bloomed. Suddenly, a bright Buddha light bloomed. A strong power floated out, and the blinding golden Buddha light made the entire Sabodhi temple unable to contain any xenogenic powers. Bukong monk's eyes widened. Bukong monk's eyes widened. According to legend, when the Buddha smiled while holding a flower, the flower he was holding was the Adumbra flower that was currently in full bloom. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. The heritage of the Sabodhi monastery was much deeper than that of the Great Light Temple. They even had such a legendary existence. However, when Chu Xiu saw the Adumbra flower, his first reaction was not to wonder how difficult it was to deal with. Instead, he wondered if he could use this thing to refine another supreme god pill. At the same time, Rama also formed a seal with his hands. In an instant, the array formation of the entire Sabodhi monastery began to stir. A wisp of chi and blood bloomed within the wisp of Buddhist light around him. A dazzling golden light bloomed behind his head. This was actually the state of burning his primordial spirit. The expressions of the surrounding warriors who were watching the battle suddenly changed. The Sabodhi monastery was really going all out this time. Rama had actually started burning his blood essence and primordial spirit right from the start. He did not even test the waters. This clearly showed that he was not prepared to leave any way out for himself. Moreover, as Rama formed a seal with his hands, a huge light shadow appeared in the Sabodhi monastery. It was a huge Bodhi tree that seemed to connect the heavens and the earth. All sorts of colorful fruits hung on its branches. They were as dazzling as crystals and gems. Compared to the Buddha pagoda and the Adumbra flower, the Sabodhi tree was undoubtedly more famous. After all, the entire Sabodhi monastery's name came from this tree. It was said that the Sabodhi monastery's Sabodhi tree could allow Buddhist disciples to gain enlightenment under the tree. It would increase the Buddhist charm, allowing them to understand the various Buddhist principles more quickly. In the past, when people from the Great Light Monastery came to the Sabodhi monastery to discuss Buddhism, they had to pay a huge price to sit under the Sabodhi tree and gain enlightenment for a day. However, no one in the entire martial world had ever heard that the Sabodhi tree could actually activate its power. They had always thought that this thing could only be used for cultivation. At this moment, a glimmer of hope even appeared in the hearts of the other sections. The Sabodhi monastery was actually able to explode with such great power. Perhaps Chu Xiu would return in defeat today? Looking at the Adumbra flower with Buddhist light and the incomparably huge Sabodhi tree, Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "In order to deal with me, it looks like the Sabodhi monastery has used all its trump cards. You've really put in a lot of effort. Unfortunately, it's still useless." As soon as Chu Xiu finished speaking, he waved his hand, and all the warriors belonging to the Kunlun devil cult were ready to move. They stood in various positions, forming one battle formation after another. At the sight of this, the expressions of the older generation cultivators like the Ing family's old ancestor changed. Battle formation. It was the Kunlun devil cult's battle formation. If one could use items to set up a battle formation, one could naturally use people as well. However, it required a large number of warriors and repeated practice. Practicing battle formations required a large amount of time, so even some of the top sects with sufficient numbers of people were unwilling to use such things. The gains did not make up for the losses. Thus, only big countries like Eastern Qi and Northern Yen would use simple battle formations like this to deal with battles on the battlefield. And now, looking at the battle formation that Chu Xiu's subordinates had created, it was mighty and powerful. It was definitely not an ordinary battle formation. Moreover, the coordination between the cultivators showed that they had definitely practiced it for a long time. The Ing family's patriarch and the others guessed more or less the same. During the year that Chu Xiu was away, the Kunlun devil cult had sealed off their mountain. Not only did they cultivate, but they also took out these battle formations to practice. As for the origin of the battle formations, they came from the inheritance of the Skycry demon Exalt. Grandmaster Yuanji had restored them and given them to others to practice. Back then, Wei Shuya had all the disciples of the Kunlun devil cult practice these battle formations to calm the hearts of the people. He was afraid that they would be too idle and cause trouble. He did not expect that they would be put to use today. Chu Xiu, Wei Shuya, and Shang Tianliang stepped forward. Just the three of them alone were enough to destroy 90% of the sects in the pugilistic world. Leave Rama to me. Merchant City's city lord and elder Wei, think of a way to destroy that Adumbra flower. That flower keeps giving me an extremely dangerous feeling. After speaking to these two, Chu Xiu turned to He Jie and Green Jade and said, "Do you see that old monk? The two of you deal with him. There's no need to risk your life. That old monk has already sacrificed 90% of his vitality. You just need to hold him back. Even if you can't kill him, he won't be able to live." He Jie and Green Jade stepped forward and nodded simultaneously. Everyone present was stunned when they saw He Jie and Green Jade standing behind Chu Xiu. Where did Chu Xiu find these two fellows? Looking at their appearances, they looked like barbarians. However, it was only their skin color that was similar. Other than that, they did not look like barbarians. Moreover, based on the auras they exuded, everyone could sense that they were very strong. However, they could not tell exactly how strong they were. However, from where they were standing, it was clear that they were definitely not weak. At the very least, they were stronger than Chu Wuji and the others. This was because they were standing directly behind Chu Xiu. "Fight!" As Chu Xiu shouted these words, the formation-breaking sword in his hand descended. An extremely sharp light slashed towards Rama. Wherever the blade passed, it seemed as if the entire world would be torn apart. Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang also attacked that Adumbra flower. With this flower in full bloom, aside from the purest physical strength, all other types of energy within the range of Sabodhi Monastery would be completely repelled. If they could not destroy it, it would be extremely difficult for Chu Xiu's side to break into Sabodhi Monastery. Even if they succeeded in the end, they would definitely suffer great losses. In terms of martial arts, Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang both belonged to the type that relied on brute force. When the two of them worked together, they had to destroy the Adumbra flower as quickly as possible. However, Monk Bukong had used 90% of his vitality to make the Adumbra flower bloom. How could he let the two of them succeed so easily? He chanted the name of Buddha, and Sanskrit characters appeared around him. These characters transformed into Buddhist seals that enveloped the two of them. However, in the next moment, He Jie roared and smashed the Buddhist seals with his giant war hammer. Green Jade followed closely behind him, muttering a strange incantation. A layer of green mist ignored all stellar energy defenses and landed on Monk Bukong's body, devouring his vitality. As soon as the two of them made their moves, the expressions of everyone present changed abruptly. Chapter 1153. After Chu Xiu destroyed the Great Light Temple, everyone thought that they had seen through Chu Xiu's trump card. However, in the blink of an eye, Chu Xiu had brought out two people of unknown origins. This immediately shocked everyone present. He Jie and Lu Ju were not warriors, so even if they attacked now, no one could see their realms. Although they could not see their realms, they could see their strength. He Jie's physical strength was extremely strong. At the very least, no one present had the confidence to say that they could defeat He Jie in terms of physical strength. As for Lu Ju, her strange attack method was somewhat incomprehensible to the crowd. However, it seemed to be something like a curse. What was truly terrifying was that her curse could actually ignore the level of defense of Monk Bukong. It could ignore any internal supreme force or even mental strength. It could directly begin to deprive a person of their vitality. This was simply impossible to guard against. It was a little too terrifying. One was in existence whose physical body was comparable to the heaven and earth realm, and the other was a priest who could endanger the heaven and earth realm warriors. When these two joined forces, the degree of strangeness was so great that no one present dared to say that they could completely defeat them. Only the heavens knew where Chu Xiu had gotten these two people from. With such powerful strength, why had they never heard of them before? Just now, when the Sabodhi Monastery used their trump card to fight for their lives by bringing out the Sabodhi treasure tree and Adumbra, they thought that the battle would be tilted in their favor. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would flip the situation once again with a flip of his hand? At that moment, Chu Xiu and Luomo had already started fighting. The moment the two of them started fighting, it was as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. The two of them seemed to be fighting with their lives on the line. Rama, who had burned his essence blood and primordial spirit, had already erupted to the peak of his strength. In addition, with the support of the Sabodhi tree and Adumbra Brahma's power suppressing Chu Xiu's heterogeneous demonic energy, Rama's current foundation of power was even superior to Chu Xiu's. As Chu Xiu's blade slashed down, Rama put his palms together. The shadow of the Subhuti treasure tree swayed. Golden Buddhist light poured into Rama's palms. A powerful force erupted and directly extinguished the power of Chu Xiu's blade. Feeling that powerful force, Chu Xiu's expression changed slightly. Among the heaven and earth mysterious realm experts in the lower realm, Rama should be considered the youngest. However, his abilities were not the weakest. In fact, he was among the top few. Now Rama had started to fight with his life on the line. Even Chu Xiu was shocked by his power. The misty slash combined with the blade intent of the break formula was unable to do anything to his opponent. One could imagine how powerful Rama's current foundation of power was. The world-extinguishing flame around Chu Xiu started burning. It moved along the blade of the saber and burned in the direction of Rama. However, halfway through, the world-extinguishing flame came into contact with the Buddhist light that had erupted from Adumbra Brahma. Although it did not immediately extinguish, it was stuck halfway and could not take another step forward. Chu Xiu frowned. This damn thing's power was actually so overbearing that even the world-extinguishing flame could not suppress it. At this moment, the situation of the Kunlun devil cult people below was not too optimistic. There were not many people in the Sabodhi monastery. There were less than 1,000 monks in total, which was less than a tenth of the Kunlun devil cult. However, with the Adumbra Brahma's Buddhist light present, Chu Xiu's subordinates could not break into the Sabodhi monastery. Only Lu Jianghe, Lu Fengxian, and a few others could charge in. Unfortunately, they were beaten out in an instant. Before Chu Xiu could think of a way, Rama had already chanted the name of Buddha. On the Sabodhi tree, a dazzling golden fruit exploded with a blinding Buddhist light. It landed in Rama's hand, and instantly, a staff formed from golden Buddhist light appeared. As the staff smashed down, Chu Xiu's body was completely sealed by the blinding Buddhist light. The power of the Sabodhi tree and the Adumbra Brahma actually had some kind of connection, causing Chu Xiu's body to be completely enveloped in Buddhist light. Even the formation breaking technique could not cut it open. More accurately, the formation breaking technique could cut it open, but the moment it was cut open, it would be filled with Buddhist light. The staff fell from the sky, and the Vairocana Dharma appeared behind Chu Xiu. He formed a colorless sealing palm imprint and faced the attack, but it was instantly defeated. In this state, Rama's power was frighteningly strong. Perhaps even Yi Xiaonan would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Holding the formation-breaking technique in front of him, Chu Xiu's body instantly erupted with a large amount of gold-and-silver true fire. The power of the Adumbra Brahma could seal off all kinds of strange powers, but it could not seal off pure physical power. However, just by using pure physical power to block, Chu Xiu was directly smashed into the ground by Rama's staff, creating a huge crater. Seeing Chu Xiu crawl out of the crater in a sorry state, none of the martial artists who were secretly watching the battle mocked Chu Xiu. On the contrary, everyone's heart sank, because Chu Xiu's strength was beyond their imagination. Although Chu Xiu was the one who had suffered from that blow, who was he facing? He was facing the divine monk Rama, who had ignited his vital energy and primordial spirit, and was supported by the power of the Sabodhi tree. Meanwhile, Chu Xiu himself was being suppressed by the power of the Adumbra Brahma. Most importantly, Chu Xiu was still at the peak of the true fire spirit refinement realm. He had not yet reached the mysterious opening of heaven and earth realm. In this state, Chu Xiu should have been killed by a single slap from Rama. However, although he was in a sorry state, he crawled back up as if nothing had happened and continued to fight. This was truly terrifying. Rama frowned. Most of the time he was expressionless, but a hint of anxiety appeared on his face. It was not that he was anxious for success, but that Chu Xiu's strength had also surpassed his imagination. He could not last long by igniting his vital energy and primordial spirit. If he could not kill Chu Xiu in this battle, then their Sabodhi monastery would sooner or later experience another calamity. Rama let out a long breath. As he put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha, specks of Buddhist light rose from the Sabodhi tree. Each speck of Buddhist light nurtured a Buddha. Chu Xiu's expression changed abruptly when he sensed that power. Pure demonic chi swirled around his body. As his hand descended, the sky-wept blood rain suddenly descended. The powerful aura tore through the void. Even the power of Adumbra could not temporarily seal the space torn by the mantra of great compassion. The phantom of the demon god stretched out half its body, wanting to tear apart the Buddhist light. However, in the next moment, the Dharma images of Buddhas condensed within the endless Buddhist light. In an instant, they covered the entire sky. They chanted the name of Buddha in unison. And in an instant, the sound of Buddhist chanting resounded throughout the universe. 10,000 Buddhas greeting. The space torn by the demonic chi collapsed. The phantom of the demon god wailed and shattered. This was the first time the mantra of great compassion had been directly suppressed in a head-on battle. One could imagine how powerful this power was. Moreover, this was not the end. The endless Buddhist light transformed into a powerful sealing force that directly pressed Chu Xiu into the ground. His inner force, true fire, and world-destroying fire kept erupting, but they could not stop this powerful force. It directly pressed Chu Xiu into the ground, and he instantly lost all signs of life. Everyone present was stunned. Chu Xiu was dead? Although the power of Rama's 10,000 Buddha greeting technique was indeed very shocking, and it could even be said to have frightened them, Chu Xiu should not have died just like that. In the next moment, Rama suddenly turned around and put his palms together. The formation that had appeared from the void was directly grasped in his hands, revealing Chu Xiu's slightly pale face. Rama said calmly, "A very powerful illusion. Even I did not see any clues at the beginning. The northern Buddha sect cultivates the body, while the southern Buddha sect cultivates techniques. You thought that I was only skilled in powerful Buddhist techniques, so you paid a huge price to use an illusion to kill me at close range. Unfortunately, you are wrong. The Buddhist lineage is actually not that divided. The northern Buddha sect cultivates the body, while the southern Buddha sect cultivates techniques. This has never come from the mouths of the Sabodhi monastery and the Great Light Temple." Chu Xiu's expression suddenly changed. On the other side, Rama's body emitted a golden light, and a powerful force came from the blade. Chu Xiu was directly thrown out. At the same time, Rama's hand formed a fist seal and suddenly came crashing down. Vajra demon subduing seal, angry Vajra, destroy evil and suppress demons. Chu Xiu felt as if he had been hit by a huge mountain. His body was once again blasted into the ground, creating a huge pit. The power of the eternal demon elixir in his body nourished Chu Xiu's injuries, but he still could not help but bleed a little. It had been a long time since someone had been able to make him so miserable. Although the fighting spirit in Chu Xiu's eyes was surging, he had not lost his rationality to the point of using the blood demon transformation technique to fight desperately. It was normal for the Sabodhi monastery to fight desperately in this battle, but it was not his turn to fight desperately. There were many people in the surroundings who were eyeing him covetously. Unless he could completely deal with the Sabodhi monastery, he had to hold back a portion of his strength. He definitely could not fight desperately. Chu Xiu shouted at Shang Tianliang and Wei Shuya. "How much longer do we have to defeat that Adumbra Brahma?" The battle had already reached a stalemate. Rama, who had ignited his blood essence and primordial spirit, as well as the power of the Sabodhi tree, was so powerful that he could directly suppress Chu Xiu. If he did not fight desperately, he would not be able to defeat Rama at all. He could only be sent flying again and again. As for the Bukong monk, he was, after all, a martial artist who had fought against the Kunlun devil cult 500 years ago. His battle prowess was also extraordinary. He had only sacrificed his life force, not his battle prowess. Thus, even if He Jie and Green Jade worked together and managed to outlast him, they were temporarily unable to defeat him. Thus, the most important thing right now was the blooming Adumbra Brahma. As long as he could destroy that thing, Chu Xiu would be able to use all of his trump cards without worry and win in one fell swoop. Shang Tianliang said gloomily. What are you rushing me for? This thing is very evil. The closer we get to it, the more the power of the foreign species is suppressed. How long will it take for us to destroy it with just our fists? At this moment Lu Fengxian, who was tangling with the Sabodhi monastery monks below, suddenly broke away from the battle. She stepped forward and said solemnly, "Let me." Chapter 1154. In this battle against Sabodhi monastery, only existences at the profound opening realm had the right to stand at the top of the battlefield. People like Lu Fengxian were very strong, but they could only fight against others. When Lu Fengxian suddenly stepped forward, no one sneered or questioned him. Even Shang Tianliang and Wei Shuya subconsciously stepped aside to make way for him. This was because they believed in Lu Fengxian. Unlike the other members of the Kunlun devil cult, Lu Fengxian was the only one in the Kunlun devil cult who purely believed that Chu Xiu was his good friend. That was why he stayed in the Kunlun devil cult to help Chu Xiu. If not for this, forget about the Kunlun devil cult. Even if Elysium asked Lu Fengxian to become a divine general, he would not go. Moreover, everyone had been in contact with Lu Fengxian for a long time. They only had one impression of Lu Fengxian, and that was sincerity. This was a person who would treat you sincerely as long as you treated him sincerely. Even Lu Jianghe, who would say something about everything, could not say anything bad about Lu Fengxian. This Lu Fengxian would not brag, nor would he try to be brave. If he said he would come, then he would definitely have a way to defeat Adumbra. Adumbra was on the Buddha Pagoda, and the Buddha Pagoda was at the very center of the Great Light Temple. Previously, Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang had worked together, but they had only moved less than 1/5 of the distance forward. Lu Fengxian gripped his peerless halberd with both hands. In this instant, Lu Fengxian's blood boiled and burned. Wisps of blood-red mist curled around Lu Fengxian's body, causing the surrounding space to distort. The ground beneath his feet began to crack. In fact, this was not the burning of one's blood essence. Instead, it was a scorching aura formed by boiling one's vital energy to the extreme. It was so hot that it caused the air to distort. Adumbra could restrict any type of power, but it could not restrict pure physical power. Before LV Fengxian obtained the 9 Heavens Fiend Golden Body, he was famous for his innate divine strength. At this moment, the strength of his body was even stronger than Chu Xiu's, who had refined his body with true fire. It was so strong that LV Fengxian's body couldn't bear it. Lu Fengxian's exposed skin began to crack. A large amount of crimson energy gushed out, dyeing Lu Fengxian's eyes with a crimson red, a crazed crimson red. But he suppressed this craziness. The halberd in his hand smashed towards Adumbra with a power that could shatter mountains and split seas. Shui Wuxiang and the others who were fighting in the crowd saw this and couldn't help but exclaim in shock. It's peerless. My lord has even comprehended this move? He has already completely digested the imprint left behind by Old Lord? Marquis Lu Wenho's halberd was called peerless. This move was also called peerless because the power he erupted with was unparalleled in the world. Yan Qishao, who had a straightforward personality, shook his head and said, he should have comprehended it long ago. Old Lord is already completely dead, but Lord is different. Do you still remember when Old Lord used peerless? It was when he was forced into a dead end. Old Lord's peerless will only be used for himself. Lord has comprehended peerless a long time ago, but he has never used it for himself. Instead, he has used it for Chu Xiu. This is the biggest difference between him and Old Lord. Lord and Old Lord in the end are two different people. When Yan Qishao finished speaking, the other three also let out a long sigh, as if they had thought through something and let go of their burdens. Actually, at the very beginning, the three of them had recognized Lu Fengxian as their master completely because Marquis Lu Wenho's primordial spirit imprint and inheritance were on Lu Fengxian. Simply put, they had treated Lu Fengxian as a substitute for Marquis Lu Wenho. However, after being with Lu Fengxian for such a long time, they had long been influenced by Lu Fengxian's personal charm and gradually realized a problem. Lu Fengxian was Lu Fengxian, never Marquis Lu Wenho, not in the past and definitely not now. Of course, this was no longer important to them. What was important was that even if they understood this, they were still willing to serve Lu Fengxian as their master and continue to call her lord. At this time, seeing Lu Fengxian erupt with such a powerful force, the expressions of the other warriors from Sabodi Monastery suddenly changed. They wanted to go over to stop her, but they were jointly stopped by Shang Tianliang and Wei Shuya, who did not allow them to take a step closer to Lu Fengxian. Halberd smashed down like a landslide. Everywhere he passed, there was an ear-piercing explosion. It was a powerful explosion caused by the qi of heaven and earth exploding into particles invisible to the naked eye. Even among the mysterious heaven and earth realm existences, there were only a handful of people who could reach such a level with pure physical strength. At this time, on the trunk of a giant tree in the distance, Chen Qingdi stood high and watched the scene. The news of this battle had been released so early, of course, Chen Qingdi also knew about it. However, compared to the many thoughts of others, Chen Qingdi purely came to watch the show. After seeing Lu Fengxian's attack, Chen Qingdi slapped Xie Xiaolu, who was standing beside him, and almost fell down. "Master, why did you hit me?" Xie Xiaolu looked aggrieved. Chen Qingdi said lightly, "It's nothing. It's just a pity that Lu Fengxian didn't join my world alliance." The people of Jianghu all felt that Chu Xiu was incomparably amazing. Of course, this was not a feeling, but a fact. But Chen Qingdi was different. Although he also admired Chu Xiu, he admired Lu Fengxian even more. He admired his strength, and he also admired his character. The first time he saw Chu Xiu, Chen Qingdi could feel that Chu Xiu was not the kind of person who would submit to others. Recruiting him into the sect was actually more troublesome. Lu Fengxian, on the other hand, was a person who valued friendship and righteousness and treated people sincerely. In the Jianghu, such a person was either almost dead or had become distorted in the mortal world. There were really not many people who could still maintain such a state of mind. Unfortunately, they were fated, but not fated. When he tried to recruit Lu Fengxian before she became famous, she refused, let alone now. At this time, Xie Xiaolu was simply about to cry. He said with deep confusion, "You feel pity for brother Lu. Why did you hit me?" Chen Qingdi glanced at Xie Xiaolu and said, "What, can't a master hit you if he wants to? Look at him. Then look at you, your old friend, the two on the dragon and tiger list. One is about to dominate Jianghu, the other is about to shock the world. Look at you now, do you think you shouldn't hit him?" Hearing Chen Qingdi's words, Xie Xiaolu didn't dare to say a word. Comparing himself to those two monstrous geniuses? This is shameless. How can they be compared? He directly gave up and said, hit me as much as you want. Just don't let me die, don't let World Alliance's legacy end." Chen Qingdi coldly snorted, but he didn't continue to hit him. He continued to look at the situation in front of him. Lu Fengxian's halberd strike was pure power to the extreme. Layers of Buddhist light blocked in front of him, but it couldn't block the power of his halberd strike. The ancient halberd, which had been scorched red by pure power, smashed down. In that instant, everyone felt as if the earth was quaking and the mountains were shaking. A crack appeared on the bronze pagoda, and the surrounding earth began to shatter. One of the Adumbara's flower petals was directly shattered by Lv Fengxian's halberd. Although that Adumbara had only shattered one petal, the entire flower's power seemed to have dissipated. The flower closed and withered, and the power enveloping Sabodi Monastery slowly shrank. After slashing out with the halberd, Lu Fengxian directly knelt on one knee on the ground, panting heavily. Bloody lines appeared on his skin, and blood seeped out. Clearly, that attack just now had consumed a lot of his energy. Seeing this, Shui Wuxiang and the others immediately surrounded him, vigilantly looking around. They had worried too much. Without the support of Adumbara's power, Sabodi Monastery immediately fell into a disadvantage. They were surrounded and attacked by 10 times their number of enemies. Seeing this, Shang Tianliang and Wei Shuya immediately attacked the two sides. Wei Shuya and He Jie attacked Monk Bukong, while Shang Tianliang and Chu Xiu attacked Rama. Shang Tianliang punched out, and the power of withering burst forth. A strange power rippled in the wind generated by his fist. However, Rama merely formed a Buddhist seal with his hand. It was as if the Buddha was smiling. In an instant, a green fruit on the Subhuti treasure tree flickered and merged with the Buddhist seal. It directly sent Shang Tianliang flying. He also smashed into the ground, creating a large pit. Shang Tianliang gritted his teeth as he crawled to his feet. He finally understood how Chu Xiu had felt earlier. This monk's explosive power was indeed hard to block. In fact, he couldn't even take as much as Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu said solemnly, "City Lord Shang, don't be in a hurry to fight him. Rama can't win in this state. Although the power brought about by burning his vital energy and primordial spirit is strong, there is a limit. Even if he is young and strong, and his vital energy is at its peak, how long can he burn it for? In the end, the one who can't hold on will still be him." Shang Tianliang snorted coldly and said, "Why didn't you say so earlier? If you don't personally experience it, how will you know how strong this power is?" At this time on Rama's side, Rama, who had been incomparably calm, was now anxious. Variables, all of them were variables. They didn't expect He Jie and Green Jade to be present, so when they came up with the plan, they thought that their trump cards would be enough to fight against Chu Xiu. They also didn't expect Lu Fengxian's strength to be this strong. With her true fire refinement realm cultivation, she could explode with physical strength that was even more terrifying than most heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm cultivators. She shattered the Adumbra flower, which had just bloomed, and it started to close. These variables put their Subodhi monastery in danger. If they didn't think of a solution, their Subodhi monastery would probably follow in the footsteps of the Great Light Temple. After checking his remaining qi, blood and primordial spirit, and estimating his limit, Luomo said in a deep voice, "Xiaomo, activate the 6 paths of Buddha rebirth formation. 15 minutes, I only need 15 minutes. Chapter 1155. The array formation that had sealed the Kunlun devil cult's rootless sacred flame was the 6 paths of reincarnation formation. However, this array formation wasn't just used for sealing. It could also be used for protection. When Xiao Mok heard what Rama said, a sense of sorrow welled up in his heart as he activated the array formation. Since Rama had said half an hour, it meant that he was going to use his last bit of strength in the remaining half an hour. Rama was younger than Xiao Mok, but when Xiao Mok's heart had died, it had been Rama who had saved him and awakened his dead heart. Therefore, Xiao Mok's feelings for Rama were very special. Not only did he see Rama as his abbot, but he also saw him as a teacher and a friend. Seeing Rama fight with his life on the line, Xiao Mok was actually the one who felt the worst. The 6 paths of reincarnation formation was activated. This array formation wasn't like the one in the Kunlun devil cult that hadn't been maintained for 500 years. This array formation was at its peak and wouldn't be broken so easily. Rama took advantage of the moment the array was activated and formed a hand seal. In the Subodhi monastery, the image of the huge Subodhi tree slowly approached Rama. Although Chu Xiu and Shang Tianliang didn't know what Rama wanted to do, they could guess that Rama was preparing for his last bit of strength. Therefore, the two of them immediately acted to stop him. However, Rama's strength had been squeezed to its limit. With a wave of his hand, Chu Xiu and Shang Tianliang were sent flying. The huge image of the Subodhi tree merged into Rama's body, causing his aura to instantly soar to its limit. Golden light enveloped Rama's body as if he had been plated with a layer of golden light. Rama put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Golden light fell from the sky. At that moment, everyone thought that they were watching the real Buddha descend. When Shang Tianliang felt this power, he couldn't help but exclaim, "What kind of power is this? The power of the Buddhist Dharma can't reach such a terrifying level." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "What kind of power? Of course, it's a power that we can't deal with. Speaking of which, why didn't the Subodhi monastery use this thing 500 years ago? There isn't even the slightest bit of information." Lu Jiang he came over and said, "Because 500 years ago, Subodhi monastery didn't have someone like Rama. Do you think anyone can casually use the Subhuti treasure tree by burning their essence, blood and primordial spirit? One must have an innate Buddhist heart that can see one's own nature." Everyone only knew that Rama was extremely talented. He took over the position of Subodhi monastery's headmaster at a young age. He was known as the divine monk by the southern barbarians. However, no one knew that Rama's powerful Dharma cultivation was also very shocking. In the past, Su Xiai, Su Yun, and Su Jing tried to debate Dharma with Rama, but they could not win against him. At this moment, the huge Subodhi treasure tree in Rama's hand had turned into a branch. He waved it downwards, and the fruit on the branch glowed with amethyst light. It directly froze the space around Chu Xiu and Shang Tianliang. Shang Tianliang's punches landed one after another, and Chu Xiu's formation-breaking tool also slashed out wildly. However, there was no way to break through the barrier of space. In the next moment, the Subodhi treasure tree appeared in Rama's hand again. The golden fruit lit up, and endless Buddhist light enveloped the two of them, suppressing and assimilating their power. When the Subodhi treasure tree appeared for the third time, it was a black fruit that lit up this time. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. However, it wasn't a heavy object pressing down. Instead, it was the space around Chu Xiu that was shrinking and crushing them. No matter what Chu Xiu and Shang Tianliang did, they could only temporarily delay this pressure. When Wei Shuya saw this, he immediately wanted to help. However, at this moment, Monk Bukong, who had been suppressed all this time, chanted the name of Buddha. His remaining vitality was burning, turning into golden threads that wrapped around Wei Shuya, Heijie, and green jade. It was extremely soft yet extremely hard, diamond thread binding. Chu Xiu frowned. This Subodhi treasure tree was actually something of the same nature as the rootless sacred flame that burned at the peak of the Kunlun devil cult. They were both mystical spiritual objects that were nurtured by nature. However, the Kunlun devil cult hadn't occupied the rootless sacred flame for a long time. It had only been a few decades during its peak, so the Kunlun devil cult hadn't fully developed the rootless sacred flame. However, the Subhuti monastery had obtained the Subhuti treasure tree for more than 10,000 years. In these 10,000 years, although they had not used the Subhuti treasure tree more than a few times, they had thoroughly studied its methods. Each of the fruits on the Subodhi treasure tree represented a manifestation of the laws of heaven and earth. So to put it simply, Rama wasn't using his own power. Instead, he was borrowing the power of the Subodhi treasure tree. The power of each fruit was equivalent to a simplified version of a mystique. Although it was only a simplified version, it was still extremely powerful when used now. This simplified version of the mystique had fewer variations. Each fruit could only display one kind of power, but in terms of power it wasn't any weaker than a normal mystique. Seeing that the pressure of the space was getting stronger and stronger, and that they were about to be crushed into meat paste, Shang Tianliang shouted, "Hurry up and use that move of yours. I don't want to be crushed into meat paste together with you." Chu Xiu frowned. Under such circumstances, if he used the law embodiment of heaven and earth and used the mystique to suppress the power of the mystique, he would be able to break free. But what about after that? There were more than 10 gem-like fruits on the Subodhi treasure tree, and each of them carried the power of a mystique. Given Chu Xiu's current power foundation, using the law embodiment of heaven and earth would be his limit if he used one or two moves. Any more and he would hurt his foundation. Chu Xiu gritted his teeth and gripped the broken array formation in his hand tightly. A sharp light circled around his body. Chu Xiu formed mysterious hand seals. In an instant, a dark cloud of devil chi enveloped the space where Rama, Chu Xiu, and the others were. At this moment, the entire space seemed to be divided. The laws of heaven and earth within it were changing. Within the devil chi, there was one form. Outside the devil chi, there was another form. Luo Mo's expression changed slightly. After merging with the Subhuti treasure tree, his spiritual sense had also greatly increased. He could feel the powerful aura. It was a kind of power that was comparable to the Subhuti treasure tree. In fact, it was an aura that was even stronger. However, before Rama could react, the devil chi had already been torn apart. A bright moon shone out. However, upon closer inspection, how was that a bright moon? It was clearly a dazzling knife light that illuminated Rama's appearance below. At this moment, Rama felt an extreme sense of danger. The Subodhi treasure tree in his hand trembled, and a powerful aura fluctuated. However, before he could make a move, the bright moon-like radiance in the air began to shatter. Luo Mo's figure, which was reflected in the sharp light, also shattered. Kacha with a soft sound, the Saboti treasure tree in Rama's hand began to shatter. His body was also covered in cracks that gradually spread to his entire body. However, strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out. Rama's face was emotionless. He just sighed helplessly and spat out 2 words, supernatural power. When he saw Chu Xiu being forced into a corner by the nailing head 7 arrows with his own eyes, Rama went to many ancient books to understand the existence of supernatural powers. This kind of power was unsolvable. Just like now, he couldn't even block it. When the cracks spread to the ground, Rama's body also began to shatter. Shang Tianliang watched all of this with his mouth agape. This power was so strong and strange. It was completely different from the supernatural power that Chu Xiu used in the Great Light Temple. But it was even stronger. This move is also a supernatural power? As Shang Tianliang asked, he suddenly realized that Chu Xiu's body was a little unstable. He wanted to help him up, but he heard Chu Xiu suddenly say, "Don't touch me." Shang Tianliang was stunned. Only then did he realize that there was a pool of blood under Chu Xiu's feet. Chu Xiu's exposed hands were actually covered in cracks and blood was flowing out. Shang Tianliang suddenly reacted. He didn't continue to chase after the others. Instead, he stood guard by Chu Xiu's side. The clouds parted and the moon shone brightly. This was a supernatural power that Dugu Weiwei had used before. Its strength was even stronger than the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. The backlash that it brought to Chu Xiu was also greater than he had imagined. At this moment, Chu Xiu's entire body, except for his head, was covered in bloody wounds. If Shang Tianliang touched him, he might immediately fall to the ground and let the others know that something was wrong. Therefore, he told Shang Tianliang not to touch him. He stood there and activated the power of the eternal demon pill with all his might to recover his vitality. Of course, at this moment, no one paid attention to these details. Everyone was so shocked by the supernatural power that Chu Xiu could use that they couldn't speak. This kind of power was definitely a powerful existence that surpassed their level. If they were in Rama's shoes, the result would be the same. How could they defend against this kind of power that was beyond their understanding and imagination? They couldn't. Just as Wei Shuya and the others were preparing to attack Saboti Zen Temple, Bukong Monk suddenly let out a low roar. His entire body was burning fiercely. His last trace of vitality, his last trace of qi, blood, and primordial spirit were all burning. The scorching flames forced Wei Shuya and the others to retreat. In the blink of an eye, Bukong Monk was burned to nothing. Wei Shuya and the others were stunned. What did Bukong Monk mean by this? Seeing that Rama was dead, Saboti Zen Temple's defeat was certain. So he chose to burn himself? However, before they could react, a golden relic suddenly shot out from the raging flames and headed straight for Luo Mo, who was about to turn into ashes. At this moment, only Rama's head had not turned into ashes. The relic pierced through Rama's head. It was as if it had smashed Rama's head into pieces. However, it brought along a wisp of golden light and landed in Xiaomok's hands. The expression on Xiaomok's face changed several times. He shouted, "Retreat!" The 6 paths of Buddha's rebirth formation suddenly doubled in size. It trapped 90% of the devil cult warriors who were rushing to attack Saboti Zen Temple. They took the opportunity to turn and escape. Chapter 1156. The Kunlun devil cult had already won the battle at Saboti Monastery, but the remaining people could not catch up. In terms of individual strength and cultivation, Saboti Monastery still had the upper hand. 90% of the people were trapped by the 6 paths of Buddha's rebirth formation. Relying on the remaining 10% to chase after them was not a chase, but a death wish. Therefore, Chu Xiu's people all retreated and began to take over Saboti Monastery. At this time, Chu Xiu also slowly walked into Saboti Monastery. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and there was a faint bloody aura spreading out. To outsiders, Chu Xiu was declaring his sovereignty and showing off his power. But in reality, Chu Xiu was now injured to the point where he could not even walk quickly. As for the bloody aura, that was true. He had lost so much blood, it would be strange if there was no bloody aura. After entering Sabodhi Monastery, Lu Jianghe walked over with a strange look on his face. He looked like he wanted to pat Chu Xiu's shoulder and said, "I didn't expect that the monks of Sabodhi Monastery would actually die in your hands. You should know that 500 years ago they were." Before Lu Jianghe could finish, he saw Chu Xiu fall to the ground. He looked at his hand in confusion. He did not use any earth energy, so what was the meaning of this? Was this a scam? Chu Xiu let out a long sigh, then took out a handful of medicinal pills and threw them into his mouth. Outside, he did not even dare to take medicinal pills, for fear that others would see him in such a weak state. Seeing how exhausted Chu Xiu looked, Mei Qinglian and Mu Ziyi surrounded him and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's just a backlash of power, but it can be recovered." Lu Jianghe glanced at Chu Xiu, who was surrounded by Mei Qinglian and Mu Ziyi, and then at Lu Fengxian, who was also exhausted and suffering from the backlash of her energy. Only Shui Wuchang and the other three weirdly shaped people were surrounding them. He couldn't help but shake his head and sigh, "What a gap! How many people under my holy church have we lost?" Wei Shuya shook his head and said, "It's not too big. Unfortunately, the Sabodhi Monastery's losses aren't that big either. Previously, they had the protection of Adumbra Polo, and then they activated the 6 paths of Pagoda Rebirth formation, so they didn't actually lose many people. Most importantly, I suspect that Luo Mo is not dead." Lu Jianghe nodded and said, "That's what I feel too. Don't think that Monk Bukong is special, but the undying Zen that he cultivates is extremely difficult to deal with. Even the heartless demon Venerable couldn't kill him. Now that he took the initiative to turn into a Saraira and take away the last trace of Luo Mo's true spirit, he must have a plan. He should be sacrificing himself to preserve Luo Mo's last trace of vitality." Everyone saw the scene of Monk Bukong, but no one had the power to stop it. They could only watch Xiao Mo and the others escape with the Saraira that was suspected to be Luo Mo's true spirit. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's okay as long as the southern barbarian land is under our control. The rest of us don't need to return to Kunlun for now. Just take over the entire southern barbarian land and expel all the forces." At this point, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a trace of coldness, and he said, "Those who are willing to leave after persuasion, the Holy Church owes him a favor. Those who are not willing to leave, kill them." Most of the time, Chu Xiu was actually not that overbearing. For example, he controlled the northern Yin pugilistic world. While collecting offerings, he also brought order and protection to them. But this time, Chu Xiu had to be overbearing. The entire southern barbarian land must be under his control. For the rest of the time, Chu Xiu was recuperating in the southern barbarian land. The overall situation was settled, and everything in the outside world was handed over to Wei Shuya and the others to deal with. In fact, it would be faster for Chu Xiu to recuperate in the Daluotian land. After all, the heaven and earth essence qi was abundant there. But for Chu Xiu, the Daluotian land was also full of danger. In the mortal world, he was the demon lord who could dominate the underworld, but in the Daluotian land, there were many people who could threaten him. During the time when Chu Xiu was recuperating in seclusion, the direction of the underworld had changed completely. The northern and southern Buddhist sects were successively destroyed in the hands of Chu Xiu, and the entire underworld was shrouded in demonic power. The scene of the Kunlun devil cult dominating the world seemed to be repeating after 500 years. Especially Feng Manlu. Previously, because of Chu Xiu's identity, Feng Manlu had never put Chu Xiu on the sovereign list. But after Chu Xiu destroyed the Sabodhi Zen monastery, Feng Manlu immediately ranked Chu Xiu 6th on the sovereign list, below Yi Xiaonan and above the old celestial master. In fact, it was reasonable to say that Chu Xiu should be ranked above Yi Xiaonan. After all, the power of the Kunlun devil cult had completely surpassed that of the moon-worshipping sect. However, Yi Xiaonan had now refined the demon seed, and had not come out of seclusion. No one knew how strong he was. If Feng Manlu directly put Chu Xiu above Yi Xiaonan, Feng Manlu was also afraid that Chu Xiu would think that they were provoking the relationship between the two major demonic sects, so they did not dare to mess around. At present, the entire underworld was in a state of apprehension. After seeing Chu Xiu make a move, No one dared to guarantee that they had the strength to challenge Chu Xiao. At this time, unless all the forces in the underworld united together, put aside their prejudices, put aside any internal strife, and fought desperately with Chu Xiao regardless of the loss, then they would have a chance to win. Otherwise, there would only be two results when facing the Kunlun devil cult with the strength of a single force. One was to have the whole family intact, and the other was to leave some survivors. Therefore, when Chu Xiao subsequently expelled the martial arts forces in the southern land, the resistance he encountered was almost negligible. There were not many martial arts forces in the southern land, and under the power of Chu Xiao, those who still wanted to resist were purely courting death. Those who were tough were still in the minority. When the major sects saw that Chu Xiao only expelled the martial arts forces in the southern land, and did not attack again after occupying the southern land, they also breathed a sigh of relief. Although they would not naively think that Chu Xiao would stop here, at least he could give them a lot of time to prepare. A month later, in the Subhuti monastery, Chu Xiao's injury was nearly 90% healed. Supernatural power was the power to control the rules of heaven and earth. If one did not have enough strength to use it, it was simply suicide. After using the clouds parting moon and clear sky illuminating shadow, Chu Xiao finally understood why Dugu Weiwa had casually tossed the heavenly phenomenon to the heartless demon lord after seeing it, and did not use it himself. It was not because Dugu Weiwei could not understand the celestial phenomenon, but it was not necessary. Dugu Weiwei must have mastered more than one supernatural power, and the power of the celestial phenomenon was already very amazing in Chu Xiao's opinion. In Dugu Weiwei's opinion, it might be just SOSO, so he naturally was too lazy to cultivate it. After his injury was healed, Chu Xiao began to walk around the Subhuti monastery carefully. At the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiao and the others could be said to not have gained any benefits. Although the old monk Su Xiai usually looked like a gentle person, he was really ruthless when it came to attacking. Not only did he want to drag them down with him, but he also directly destroyed the Great Light Temple's accumulation of 10,000 years. As for the Subhuti monastery, Xiaomo was previously instructed by Rama that if they were defeated, he would leave with the last inheritance of the Subhuti monastery, so he also took away a lot of cultivation techniques, elixirs, and resources. However, such a large sect, there were many things that could not be taken away. For example, some cultivation techniques were inscribed on some of the buildings of the Subhuti monastery, and they could not be taken away or destroyed in a hurry. Of course, the most valuable things in the Subhuti monastery were the Adumbra flower and the Subhuti treasure tree. Only one of the petals of the Adumbra flower had been shattered by Lu Fengxian, but its main body was still there. As long as there was enough vitality, it could bloom. The Subhuti treasure tree had only been shattered by Chu Xiao, and its main body was still intact. The Subhuti treasure tree was like an existence like the rootless sacred fire, nurtured by the world. As long as the world existed, it would not be destroyed. In front of the Buddha pagoda of the Subhuti monastery, Chu Xiao stopped and looked for a long time. The Buddha pagoda was built by the eminent monks of the Subhuti monastery, and it had always been reinforced. Every generation of abbot or eminent monk would leave their understanding of the Buddhist Dharma in it, but it was only the Buddhist Dharma, not cultivation techniques. Therefore, this thing was a supreme treasure for Buddhist cultivators, but for Chu Xiao, it was not very useful. As for the Adumbra flower, Chu Xiao had also carefully observed it. This thing was definitely a natural treasure, but it was only a natural treasure of the Buddhist sect. He thought for a moment, then directly brought out Grandmaster Yuanji and asked, "Do you think this thing can be used to refine Supreme God pills?" Grandmaster Yuanji shook his head and said, "I don't know." Hearing this, Chu Xiao immediately frowned and said, "I already passed the Heaven Cry Demon Venerable's inheritance to you, but you're telling me that you don't know?" Hearing this, Grandmaster Yuanji said with a wronged expression, "Lord, what you taught me was only about formations and divination. How would I know alchemy?" Chu Xiao smacked his head. Only now did he remember that he had given Miracle Dr. Feng Buping the elixir. The Heaven Cry Demon Venerable was an all-round talent, and he had always used Grandmaster Yuanji as the Heaven Cry Demon Venerable. Only now did he remember that he was not the Heaven Cry Demon Venerable. Then Chu Xiu asked someone to find Feng Buping. Feng Buping had joined the Kunlun devil cult for a long time. When he was in the subduing martial hall, he had followed Chu Xiu. This time, Feng Buping also came to the southern barbarians. If the disciples of the Kunlun devil cult were injured in the fierce battle, Feng Buping could immediately heal them. After seeing the Adumbra flower, Feng Buping pondered for a moment, then said, "The Adumbra flower is the Buddhist sect's sacred flower. I'm afraid that there is no other treasure of this level in the entire underworld. Logically speaking, it can be used to refine Supreme God pills. However, the Adumbra flower can only reach its peak when it blooms, so I can't guarantee the effect of refining it now. Also, although the Heaven Cry demon Venerable left behind the refining method of the Supreme God pill, it was just an attempt, and he succeeded by luck. Even if the Heaven Cry demon Venerable tried again, he might not succeed, let alone me." Chapter 1157. To Chu Xiu, the Adumbra flower wasn't very useful, at least for now. Since he couldn't refine it into a Supreme God pill, he would just leave it there and wait for Feng Buping to have a chance. What Chu Xiu was really interested in was the Subhuti treasure tree. After all, he had experienced the true power of the Subhuti treasure tree. At this time, under the Subhuti treasure tree, Shang Tianliang was sitting cross-legged, studying something. Chu Xiu walked over and said, "Lord Shang also wants to comprehend the Buddhist Dharma under the Subhuti treasure tree?" Shang Tianliang shook his head and said, "I don't have that kind of talent. I just want to study how this thing was born. Since it's a tree, it must have grown. But why does the fruit it bears contain the power of the laws of heaven and earth? Say if I break off a branch, can I plant it, pour my power into it, and control it after it grows bigger?" Chu Xiu shook his head when he heard this. Shang Tianliang was practically a vegetable planting maniac. He wanted to try everything. Chu Xiu said directly, "That's impossible. The Subhuti treasure tree is born from heaven and earth. It's actually something of the same nature as the rootless sacred fire on Kunlun Mountain. It's just that the way it appears is different. One is a fire, and the other is a tree. Moreover, even if you can really grow it, it's useless. At first, there wasn't a single fruit on the Subhuti treasure tree. It took who knows how many years to grow to its current state. This thing has existed since ancient times. I heard that in the lower realm, it only grew 2 fruits in 10,000 years. If you want to wait for this thing to bear fruit, you probably won't be able to wait until the tree on your grave is taller than the Subhuti treasure tree." Shang Tianliang glared at Chu Xiu. Why was his tone so similar to that of Lu Jianghe? Shang Tianliang himself had forgotten that his mouth was also very poisonous. Chu Xiu ignored Shang Tianliang and sat under the Subhuti treasure tree. He formed a Buddhist seal and closed his eyes to meditate. When Shang Tianliang saw this, he couldn't help but sneer. "I say, Chu Xiu brat, you killed so many Buddhist disciples and cultivated a demonic art. You still want to comprehend the power of the Subhuti treasure tree? Aren't you being too whimsical? If you can comprehend the power of the Subhuti treasure tree, then the heavens are blind." Chu Xiu replied without turning his head. "Why can't I? Don't forget, I've also cultivated a Buddhist cultivation method. Humans were divided into devils and Buddhas, but everyone could learn power. The power of Buddhism is just one of the powers in this world. Monk can control it, but I can't?" Shang Tianliang snorted disdainfully. If it was like what Chu Xiu said, then the devil could control Buddhist techniques. In fact, if one wanted to cultivate a Buddhist cultivation method to a profound level, they would need a large number of Buddhist scriptures and a deep understanding of Buddhism. Only then would they be able to push their cultivation method to the peak. For someone like Chu Xiu to casually comprehend something under the Subhuti treasure tree, this was simply a fantasy. As soon as Shang Tianliang thought about this, he saw the Subhuti treasure tree emit a bright light. Those crystal-like fruits bloomed with starry power and poured into Chu Xiu's body. In an instant, Chu Xiu's body was shrouded in a colorful Buddhist light. He didn't look like a devil whose hands were stained with blood. Instead, he looked like an eminent monk who had achieved the Tao. When he saw this scene, Shang Tianliang was dumbfounded. After a long time he squeezed out a word. F*ck. Apart from this word, he really couldn't think of any other words to describe his current mood. The heavens were really blind. He had studied under the Subhuti treasure tree for more than 10 days, but he had gained nothing. However, a devil like Chu Xiu had come, and the Subhuti treasure tree had reacted as soon as he sat down. How could he endure this? It was simply unreasonable. At that moment, the power of Buddhist light in Chu Xiu's body triggered all the power in his body, twisting and changing back and forth. Just as he had said to Shang Tianliang before, he had never regarded the Subhuti treasure tree as a Buddhist treasure from the beginning. Instead, he had regarded it as an existence like the rootless sacred flame. It was also a power revealed by the laws of heaven and earth. He only needed to comprehend the power within it. Who cared if it was a Buddha or a devil? He didn't know if divine monk Tan Yuan had also given the origin of power to Chu Xiu when he had passed on his legacy to Chu Xiu. Even he hadn't expected that he would succeed just as he was about to try and trigger the power of the Subhuti treasure tree. The origin of Buddhist light flowed continuously in Chu Xiu's body, and finally converged into one. In Chu Xiu's hand, a strange lotus flower actually bloomed. It was strange because this lotus flower was actually in the shape of a cross. Its entire body was white and translucent, emitting a supreme radiance. At that moment, Chu Xiu understood the true meaning of this lotus flower. The lotus flower was pure and untainted. Even if it fell into the filthy world, it could still ensure that it was bright and clean. The great cross of redemption, up and down, left and right, encompassed the world in all directions and redeemed the world. The cross-shaped lotus seal was the power to purify and redeem a world. It was also a magical power that Chu Xiu had comprehended from the Subhuti treasure tree. At this time, the other members of the Kunlun devil cult who were still in the Subodhi monastery were alarmed by this Buddhist light. They were all dumbfounded as they watched all this. It was true that Chu Xiu knew Buddhist techniques, but the number of Buddhist warriors who could comprehend the Tao under the Subhuti treasure tree could be counted on one hand. In the end, Chu Xiu, an outsider and a devil Tao warrior, had comprehended a magical power under the Subhuti treasure tree. This was quite ironic. After a while, the cross-shaped lotus seal dissipated and Chu Xiu also woke up. Seeing that everyone was staring at him in shock, Chu Xiu couldn't help but say, "Why are you all looking at me like that?" Shang Tianliang asked in disbelief. "That's it? How did you comprehend a Buddhist divine ability so easily?" Chu Xiu shrugged and said, "It's that simple. A magical power is a manifestation of the laws of heaven and earth. You can't cultivate it even if you don't. Therefore, there's no great or small accomplishment. As long as you can comprehend it, you know it. The only difference is that your strength will affect the power of your magical power." Although that was what he said, Chu Xiu also felt a trace of doubt at this time. It was too smooth. He said that the magical power was simple, but in fact it was not. Some people understood it at a glance, but some people couldn't see through it even after hundreds of years. This was the difference. However, now that the three magical powers that fell into Chu Xiu's hands, whether it was the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, the clear sky reflecting shadow, or the cross-shaped lotus seal that he had comprehended, seemed to be a matter of course. It was too smooth, so smooth that Chu Xiu couldn't believe it. But this smoothness didn't come from the beginning. The lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was the first magical power that Chu Xiu had obtained. At that time, Chu Xiu had studied it with Shang Tianliang for a long time, but they didn't have any clues. It wasn't until he was ambushed by Jun Wuxian with the 7 nails head arrows that the wisp of demonic energy that he brought out of the primitive devil cave after refining the array began to show its effects. After refining the statue, it allowed Chu Xiu to comprehend the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. At the beginning, Chu Xiu thought that it was because he had burst out of his potential in a desperate situation, which was why it was so smooth. Later, he was able to use the clear sky reflecting shadow because of the close connection between him and Dugu Weiwei. It was normal for him to be able to use the cultivation methods and magical powers that belonged to Dugu Weiwei. But this time, it was the most abnormal. Even if he had the martial arts source that Master Tam Yuan had left for him in the past, Master Tam Yuan was only at the true fire spirit refinement realm at his peak, so it was unlikely that it could cause such a big impact. So no matter how he thought about it, the most suspicious thing was that wisp of strange demonic energy that he couldn't figure out. Seeing Chu Xiu standing there in a daze, Shang Tianliang said angrily, "What's wrong? Are you so excited that you've gotten a magical power that you've become stupid?" Chu Xiu came back to his senses and said lightly, "City Lord Shang, you don't have to be discouraged. One day, when you shave your head bald, take a string of beads and sit under the Subhoodie treasure tree. You might be able to comprehend something." After rebuking Shang Tianliang, Chu Xiu then said to the others, "It just so happens that everyone is here today. It's time for us to prepare to discuss the issue of entering the Daluotion to cultivate." After calling everyone over, Chu Xiu said directly, "In order not to arouse suspicion, immediately build several branches in the southern barbaric land. One of the branches must be located at the intersection of the two worlds. At the same time, we need to establish a connection between the Daluotion and the lower realm. Once something happens to the Daluotion or the lower realm, both sides must know immediately." At this point, Chu Xiu said to Master Yuanji, "I'll leave this task to you. I can also find a lot of Imperial Sky Pavilion's formation Dao ancient books for you in the Daluotion. We must use the fastest method to find a way to establish a connection between the two worlds." Master Yuanji smiled bitterly and nodded. He knew that as long as it was Chu Xiu who threw it at him, it would definitely be a difficult problem. It was to build a formation Dao passage between the two worlds. He was probably the first person in the entire pugilistic world to do so. Also, not everyone can go to the Daluotion. We need someone in the lower realm to be in charge of guarding it. Old Wei and City Lord Shang will definitely have to go. It's not just for cultivation, but also to open up a situation in the Daluotion. As soon as Chu Xiu finished speaking, Lu Fengxian said, "I'll stay behind. My injuries haven't fully recovered yet. It's useless for me to go to the Daluotion for the time being." Chu Xiu had the indestructible fiend pill, so even though the injuries caused by the divine powers backlash were 90% healed, Lu Fengxian was not so fast. At the side, Chu Wuji shrugged and said, "I'll stay behind. It's precisely because of your injuries that you'll be able to recover faster if you go to the Daluotion." Lu Fengxian wanted to say something, but Chu Wuji said right away, "There's no need to be modest about this. After all, once the formation is set up, everyone will be able to travel between the two worlds freely." As Chu Wuji said that, he even glanced at Master Yuanji and said, "It won't take long to set up a formation, right?" Master Yuanji revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. He nodded and said, "It won't take long indeed." Chapter 1158. When Chu Xiu brought almost all of his trusted subordinates to the Daluotion, even Shang Tianliang and Wei Shiya were amazed by the strength and density of the heaven and earth essence energy in the Daluotion. When they were in the lower realm, it was actually very difficult for cultivators in the arcane illumination realm, like them, to improve their cultivation base. They could only spend a lot of time accumulating their strength bit by bit. However, now that they were in the Daluotion, they saw an opportunity to improve their cultivation base in the presence of such dense heaven and earth essence energy. Chu Xiu asked Master Yuanji to stay here and study the formation for the time being. He asked He Jie and Lu Ju to return to the Black Siv tribe while he brought his men back to Kangwu County. Chu Xiu had been gone for a long time this time. It took him almost 2 months to go back and forth. If it had been any other place, they would have reported the prefectural governor's disappearance to the Imperial Sky Pavilion's headquarters after such a long time. However, it was not the first time that Chu Xiu had gone missing. Therefore, the cultivators in Kangwu County did not feel that anything was amiss. When Chu Xiu brought Wei Shiya and the others back, Su Fengshan and the others were shocked again. The few cultivators that Chu Xiu brought back the last time were powerful enough. This time, he brought back so many people. There were even 2 powerhouses whose cultivation bases Su Fengshan could not see through. This surprised Su Fengshan even more. Where did the prefectural governor bring so many powerhouses? May I know who these people are? Su Fengshan asked carefully. Chu Xiu pointed at Wei Shiya and Shang Tianliang and said, "These 2 are seniors in my sect. They heard that I'm the prefectural governor of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, so they came to help." The rest of them are also rogue cultivators that I've recruited. Now they're considered members of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Su Fengshan had lived for so many years and had served a few prefectural governors. Chu Xiu's words could not even fool a child, let alone him. Aren't you Gu Zun's successor? Where did the elders come from? Moreover, it could be explained if you only recruited 1 or 2 powerhouses, but now you actually got so many powerhouses who were not weak. It was as if they were all queuing up for you to recruit them. This was too fake. However, although Chu Xiu's excuse was very fake, Su Fengshan did not dare to say more. With Chu Xiu's power and influence, he didn't have the guts or qualifications to interrupt. However, everything that Chu Xiu did afterward made Su Fengshan, Shen Hui, and the others somewhat dissatisfied. After Chu Xiu brought the members of the Kunlun Devil cult to Kangwu County, he actually let them take over the majority of Kangwu County's affairs. In the past, when Chu Xiu was not around, Su Fengshan and a few others were worried about the majority of Kangwu County's affairs. They even complained that Chu Xiu did not care about the affairs. However, now that Chu Xiu had taken away their authority, it was their turn to be dissatisfied. Apart from Ke Cha, who was not present, Su Fengshan and the other 2 vaguely expressed their dissatisfaction. Of course, even if Ke Cha was present, he would not dare to say anything. After all, he had seen Chu Xiu's true colors and had been forced to become Chu Xiu's trusted aide. Sir, it's not that we're dissatisfied with others taking over our positions. It's just that they have never participated in the management of Kangwu County before this. If you let them take over in such a hurry, I'm afraid it will ruin things, Su Fengshan said cautiously. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said plainly, Elder Su, you've been with me for some time now. Actually, there's no need to beat around the bush. Everyone can just say it as it is. All of you address me as sir, but if I ask you to fight with your lives on the line against Cold River City, who would dare to go? Su Fengshan and the other 2 were speechless. They did not dare to boast in front of Chu Xiu. This was not a matter of whether they dared to go or not. Rather, if they went, they would simply be throwing their lives away. Since that was the case, why would they go? Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, That's why I said that all of you don't dare, but they do. It's very dangerous to become Chu Xiu's trusted aide. All of you don't want to be my trusted aide, but you still want to hold on to more authority. Is there such a good thing in this world? However, Elder Su, you don't have to worry. After all of you have been following me since the beginning. I won't go overboard with all of you. You will still be responsible for contacting the Imperial Sky Pavilion and other external affairs. Elder Su and Qin Zhong, both of you were given to me by Lu Sanjin. I won't be able to sit on the position of Kangwu County's county governor for long. When I hand over the position, I will put in a good word for you in front of Lu Sanjin and guarantee your future. Also, Shen Hui, you are a local cultivator of Kangwu County. You don't have any connections in the Imperial Sky Pavilion's headquarters. However, it doesn't matter. When we return to the Imperial Sky Pavilion's headquarters, I will introduce you to Lu Sanjin. How many people in the Imperial Sky Pavilion can compare to him in terms of connections? To deal with Su Fengshan and the others, Chu Xiu could only use Lu Sanjin. Of course, this move was indeed useful. Lu Sanjin was the Eastern Region traveler and the future successor of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Lu Sanjin's reputation was not something that Chu Xiu could compare to. With Chu Xiu's promise and threats, they had no choice but to obediently hand over all their authority and only keep the portion that Chu Xiu wanted them to keep. In reality, Chu Xiu was not burning bridges after crossing the river and insisting on taking away their authority. From the very beginning, their relationship was the purest of superior-subordinate relationship. Therefore, even though they behaved themselves and did not cause any trouble for Chu Xiu, once Chu Xiu decided to develop his forces in the Daluotian Empire, they could not stay. At the very least, they would have to hand over a large portion of their authority. However, they were still very satisfied that Chu Xiu would speak up for them in front of Lu Sanjin in exchange for this temporary authority. This was especially true for Shen Hui. Previously, he could not find such an opportunity even if he wanted to. If he could be transferred to the Imperial Sky Pavilion's headquarters, Only an idiot would be willing to stay in Kangwoo County and interact with those dark barbarians. Alright, as long as all of you do your work obediently, you'll be rewarded in the future. Did anything happen at the Imperial Sky Pavilion's headquarters while I was away? Su Fengshan shook his head and said, nothing happened at the headquarters. However, there were some unusual movements at Cold River City. Advisor Lu even sent someone to deliver a message to you, telling you to be careful. Chu Xiu was stunned. What should I be careful about? Didn't Cold River City secretly come to an agreement with the Imperial Sky Pavilion that they won't make a move for the time being? Su Fengshan said cautiously. It might have something to do with the conflict between you and Qi Wuhan. I heard that Qi Wuhan returned to the Cold River City's headquarters for a while after that. After he returned, Yi Weikong decided to patrol the counties where Cold River City was located. I reckon he'll be arriving at Lingluo County soon. Advisor Lu said that Yi Weikong is an extremely domineering person. You killed Yi Tianqing, and Qi Wuhan suffered a loss at your hands. It's hard to say if he won't look for trouble for the sake of his own disciples this time to regain his reputation. Although he won't go as far as to kill someone, if an expert of this level doesn't care about his reputation and bullies the younger generation, there's nothing we can do about it. Chu Xiu frowned. No matter what, Yi Weikong is a figure that possesses the greatest reputation in the All Heaven in the last few hundred years, and his power and influence surged like a storm. He wouldn't really be so petty, right? At that moment, Chu Xiu had forgotten that he wasn't a petty person. If Lu Fengxian, Mei Qinglian, and the others were bullied like that, he would do the same. Bullying the weak. He wouldn't care about that. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, all right, I understand. You can leave first. After Su Fengshan and the others left, Chu Xiu held his chin and frowned. Lu Sanjin didn't say that Yi Weikong would definitely come. This was just a deduction he made based on Yi Weikong's personality. However, if Yi Weikong came, it would truly be a difficult problem. With Chu Xiu's current trump cards, he had no idea what he could use to stop a martial immortal level expert. Although Chu Xiu didn't know exactly how strong Yi Weikong was, he knew from looking at Jun Wuxian that he would not be able to stop him at all. At that moment, Wei Shuya walked into the hall. When he saw the expression on Chu Xiu's face, he asked, is there something troublesome? Chu Xiu nodded. Then he asked, where's City Master Shang? Wei Shuya shook his head helplessly. He said, he gathered a lot of strange seeds in the lower realms. They were all ancient flowers and natural treasures. However, he was unable to plant any of them. After coming to the Daluotian Empire, he saw that the natural energy here was very dense. Thus, he decided to give it a try and see if he could plant all of those seeds. Thus, he went out to find a place to plant vegetables. Oh, that's right, exactly what happened on your side. Since we've come to the Daluotian Empire, we're outsiders after all. We must act as if we're treading on thin ice and be careful. Chu Xiu nodded and told Wei Shuya everything about Cold River City. In truth, it was fate that made fools of people. The one who had enmity with Cold River City was the Imperial Sky Pavilion, not Chu Xiu. However, the problem was that Cold River City just had to touch his bottom line. Chu Xiu couldn't tolerate that. The southern barbaric land was the key to the lower bound. Not to mention that Cold River City wanted to make a move. Even if the Imperial Heaven Pavilion wanted to take back his position as the county governor and replace him with someone else, Chu Xiu could fall out with the Imperial Heaven Pavilion on the spot. After Wei Shuya heard that, he stroked his beard. He felt that the matter was a little tricky. A martial immortal level expert was planning to cause trouble for you. Anyone would feel troubled after hearing that. After thinking for a long time, Wei Shuya shook his head and said, it seems that Cold River City is afraid of something in the Imperial Sky Pavilion, so they won't attack the Imperial Sky Pavilion for the time being. The Imperial Sky Pavilion is a great sect that has existed since the ancient era, and has been passed down in the Daluotian Empire for so long. There must be something in the sect that others are afraid of. However, that's only for the Imperial Sky Pavilion, not for you. We can't guess what an expert of this level is thinking, nor can we guess. Although your fake identity is that of the ancient sovereign's successor, there are strong and weak martial immortals. In addition, Yi Weikong is domineering and overbearing. He might not care about your identity as the so-called ancient sovereign's successor. It's more likely that the ancient sovereign will come personally. Unfortunately, this isn't the lower realms. If we were in the lower realms, I might be able to use the power of the rootless sacred flame. After hearing Wei Shiya mention the rootless sacred flame, Chushio suddenly had a bold idea. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.